Hello and welcome, this is Noah with Nomad Gaming, and thank you for joining us for another video about the Marvel Champions LCG. Marvel Champions is a living card game produced and distributed by Fantasy Flight Games, and if you are looking for a place to stay up to date on news, strategy, content, deck building, and of course gameplay, please subscribe to the channel to join our caravan and stay up to date with what is going on in the community. Today we bring you a special video that is going to look at some of the possibly overlooked or less used cards from the basic aspect and talk about why you should consider playing them in your next build. So without further ado, let's jump back to the basics and see what we've got. Starting off with one of the more exciting cards that was printed in recent expansions, the QUINCARRIER serves an interesting role. The reason I put it in here, I wanted to talk about the distinction between this and the Helicarrier. So for 3 costs, you can play this if you have the Avenger trait, and then you can exhaust QUINCARRIER to generate a wild resource. The Helicarrier doesn't have the Avenger trait restriction, and it reduces the cost of the next card that you play. So one of the things that is interesting to consider here is whether or not you need a specific resource match. If you need a resource match for a lot of cards that you're playing or for any other purpose, you will want to consider QUINCARRIER as an option, because you get this on the table and then you permanently have whatever resource you're going to want. This is better than the enhanced cards that can only produce one, because it's static and it's there and it's always available to you once per turn. You can get any resource basically that you would need, because this pulls out a wild resource. Downsides of this though are that it does require the Avenger trait, and then it does have the it doesn't reduce the cost, so you can't end up with a free card here. But I think free versus paid the same cost really balances out to about the same thing. So it's a good card. I think it's awesome. Any deck that you're playing in an Avenger, this is a strong consideration. There's also a distinction. This has the mental resource instead of the physical resource, so if that's relevant to you, you may want to consider which one you're going to play, but definitely worth considering in all of your builds, and I like it a lot. Let's jump over and take a look at a card that I think gets very little love, but has some pretty awesome combos that it can work with, and that's Invulnerability. This is a 3-cost event. It has a hero action that says give your hero a tough status card. It's got the physical resource, and I think a lot of people don't play this card because they feel that it's a little bit too slow. It's going to cost a lot. It's almost your whole hand or your whole hand for most heroes, and this card is going to just give you a tough, but tough can really change the game. You've got a couple of things like great responsibility, which if you pair with this means that you can take a whole ton of damage and convert it to, or a whole bunch of threat, convert it to damage, and then not actually have the damage happen, which is good. You've got other options. This card plays well in some of the protection decks where you're trying to get attacked regularly. This card is a great one or two of in a deck that just, if you get attacked, you'll lose the game, but you put this on you early, get yourself a tough, and then try not to take any damage for the whole game, and this is like your super backup option in case you do get hit. I like it a lot. I don't play it as often as I probably should, but I think it's worth consideration, especially with the card pool expanding the way it is, and with the new villains that are coming out. I think tough is going to be much more important to our basic gameplay. Jumping over here to take a look at Honorary Avenger. I think this card gets into some decks, but gets labeled a lot of times as an ally-specific card. One of the things that you need to remember with this is that it attaches to a friendly character, and so for 0 cost, you can thin your deck a little bit, get +1 hit point on your hero or another hero, so long as you have the Avenger trait. It's important to remember that limitation, that you need the Avenger trait in order for this to work out. You've got to have, there's a couple of heroes that don't have the Avenger trait, you should remember, and sometimes when you're in alter ego form, you don't have the Avenger trait, so you can't just play this. But if you are carrying the Avenger trait and you can drop this onto the table, that +1 hit point can be a big deal. Playing it onto a hero rather than an ally can be a big deal, and I think it's something that a lot of decks, especially decks that are trying to be heavy on strength resources, can get away with playing a handful of these. It's also not limited to one per player, so you can drop 3 of them on you. Lockjaw. This card is highly controversial sometimes, but I just keep seeing the value here. I mean, it does not bother me to put a card into my deck that I'm going to spend as a resource most of the time, with the possibility that I can use it as an emergency blocker, or I can get it for that extra thwart or attack on a turn out of my discard pile, put it onto play, and just have that extra value. It gets played most of the time, just gets discarded, but Lockjaw fits into a lot of places. One place I've found him to be fun right now is the Hulk deck. In hero form, Hulk only has 4 hand size, but if you've got Lockjaw in your discard pile and nothing that's come good in your hand, you can play Lockjaw for 4 and get that extra value. Plus it has a strength resource icon, so he fits well with the Hulk pack. This card, I think, is a lot better than people give it credit for, and should be played in most decks if there's any question about whether there's a slot for something to be added. All right. We've also got to take a look at Heimdall. I mean, if you're talking about underused basic cards, I think Heimdall's got to be on everybody's list. This is a 5-cost ally with the Asgard trait. He's got 4 health, 2 thwart, 3 attack. Thwarting is 1 consequential damage. Attacking is 2 consequential damage. And he has a response after he enters play. Look at the top 3 cards of the encounter deck and discard one of them. Put the others back in any order. This effect is so good. The cost here is what's prohibitive. People don't want or can't pay 5 costs for this unless you've worked out a really strong ramping strategy. But being able to look at what's coming from the encounter deck and discard one of them and then determine the order for the next ones is huge. This deck, this lets you set up what's going to be your villain's boost icon. You're going to set up what's going to be your revealed encounter cards. This is a great resource for the player to be able to control what is coming and to know what is coming and to make decisions with full information. I'm excited to see how the new pools of resources and other cards make it more possible for a card like this to see play. I don't think that it's forever going to stay in your card box and just continue to draw dust. I think that there's a world that's going to be real very soon where Heimdall is playable and where you are wanting to see what is in that encounter deck as often as possible. And so you're going to be wanting to pound out Heimdall, maybe even Falcon, trying to get value out of seeing the encounter deck and taking advantage of these more expensive cards. That's going to do it for today's quickie, but if you guys want to leave a comment down below, what are some of your favorite basic cards? What do you think is underplayed? What do you think is played too much? Share those thoughts with us in the comment section of this video. And of course, if you've made it this far, do us a favor by liking, subscribing, and sharing this video. Turn on your notifications to stay up to date with what's coming down the pipeline. And until next time, folks, let's go game.